Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all well and you can hear me. Fantastic. Okay, so while we wait for everyone to join, let's quickly catch up on the student webinar, which we were supposed to do. I didn't see a confirmation on time. Did you guys settle on anything? On which time of the day is most convenient for everyone? I see Daniel and Tawfiq are here. Tawfiq sent me an email. Okay, I must have missed it then. Let me go through my inbox and Slack message. Okay, I will check on that. Apologies, I'm not sure how I missed that. Okay, so I'll go through it. Is the time the time preferences included in that message? If so, then what I'll do is I'll go through that and then I think we were supposed to have it yesterday on a Tuesday, so let's do it next week, Tuesday. So by today or tomorrow, I'll get all the details from that message and we'll send out the invitations. Most students looking for the evening. I thought as much. It just makes the most sense. So yeah, I think let's settle on that towards the evening time, and I will send you, Tawfiq. I'll liaise with you and Daniel, especially on this one, seeing as it's the first one, and you guys are taking the lead on it. And yeah, we'll set it up for next week, Tuesday, hopefully. Lovely. Cool, cool. Okay, with that, let us jump into today's topic, right? Um, so today what I want to talk about is upskilling yourselves, right? When it comes to your studies and what happens afterwards. So think about it like this, right? When you are studying or what you are studying in your one-year qualification with us isn't the entirety of everything you're going to need to know going into the future, right? It's not going to be what you're going to use for the rest of your life. Rather, it's just a foundation, right? You're building a solid foundation in development, and on that, you will then expand and build outwards. It's like you're building a house, right? The most important thing is the foundation, but you can't live on just the foundation. You're going to need to build up the walls and the rooms and add in the furniture, and that's going to give you the complete house. So it's the same thing with your development career. You start off with building a solid foundation. So you guys, or all of you, will be doing HTML5, which is, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then depending on which specialization you chose, you will branch off into either React, into Java, or into Python, and you'll expand on those fields. But today I'm going to talk about just the HTML5, the thing that everyone doing one of the IT varsity, anyone doing the IT varsity courses will be familiar with. There's quite a few modules that are focused on HTML5 before you branch off into your specializations. Um, and I think most people would, in terms of going forward into the career, will give preference to their specializations, your Python, your React, and your Java. And for good reason. Those are extremely powerful languages, extremely powerful platforms, and there is huge potential. But you should never neglect the HTML5 aspects of your course materials either, because HTML5 is one of the most popular platforms or development languages in the world. Basically, every website you use and probably the majority of the apps you use have a bit of HTML5 in them. And so today, what I want to do is I want to help you understand where you can go with HTML5 and what are the technologies and options available for you. So once you complete your course and you have a solid understanding, and you need to branch out to make those skills more relevant to industry, what are the technologies you have out there in terms of frameworks? So I've prepared a presentation. I'm going to try to share it. I'm not sure how well this is going to go. Okay. Uh, so with Zoom, right, we go to share, we go to, let me just share my entire screen and then I will start the presentation. Okay, so let me know if you guys can still see if you can see the presentation. Lovely. Are you also seeing all of the Zoom elements, or is that hidden for you? Can you just see the presentation? Oh, there's nothing obstructing it. All right. So when it comes to developing your, sorry, I just meant, is the screen clear? Is there anything? Okay, lovely, Romesa, cool. Yeah, I was just checking if there was any of the Zoom stuff obstructing the presentation, like the chat and the little icon on the sides. Cool. Now, when it comes to HTML5 or any language really, um, when you start getting into a career in that and start actually developing in it, you're not going to be using just the language on its own, right? So, for example, HTML5, you're not just going to go with straight up HTML5 and build a career on that. Rather, you will get into one of the popular frameworks that are out there, learn it, master it, and you will build your career on one of those or multiple of those platforms. There's no company out there that's just using straight HTML5 to develop apps, right? It's just, it doesn't make sense. It's possible, but it's going to take too long to do even the most simplest, the most basics of apps. So everyone is going to use a framework or two. So in the modules that are common between all of you, in the ones that you're doing your HTML5, we don't actually cover a platform or a framework. Uh, what we do there is just straight HTML5, but that's to give you a good understanding of the languages. And once you have that understanding, then you can move up and pick a framework and specialize in it. So before I get into some of the most popular frameworks and the ones that I recommend you get into, I want to walk you through what makes a good framework or what makes a framework a viable option, especially for you guys who are just getting into the industry. So there's 5 points, right, that you need to check off and make sure that the framework you're eyeballing checks up all, right? First is popularity, right? How widely used is this framework, right? It's no point taking, weeks or months to learn a framework and nobody really uses it. There's no job opportunities for it, and there's little going on in the ecosystem. It's just not going to make sense, right? It's not going to be a productive use of time. So when you're picking a framework to get into, make sure that it's widely used and there is a strong market for it, right? Point two is support, which comes from popularity as well. It's almost like a sub point of popularity. So by support, what I mean is with two things. One is your documentation, the official documentation for the platform. So most of your or all of your major frameworks and platforms will have extensive documentations online explaining each and every feature, each and every class of that framework, and that you can go through if you need. And along with that, you have community support in the form of tutorials, in the form of forums, and wikis that will answer just about any question you have on a platform. Now, the more popular the platform is, the more of this support you're going to have. And the less popular it is, the less likely you are going to find answers to the questions you have. So as a student, especially, or someone new in the industry, you need to make sure that there is a lot of material, learning materials available for that platform before you get into it. And it's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier. Okay, that's point number two. Point number three is compatibility. Now, this again comes in two forms. One is compatibility in terms of the platforms you can launch your app on. So is it going to be specific for a platform? For example, if you develop an app, it's only for Android or it's only for iPhone. That's not really good, right? It needs to be compatible with as many platforms as possible, cross-platform. And compatibility also in terms of working with other frameworks. It might not be necessary for smaller projects, but later on, if you're working on larger projects across multiple teams, there's going to be multiple platforms or frameworks or libraries being used. And so the one that you choose needs to be able to work with those at some point. So you're not excluded from the development environment. If the platform that you choose, the framework you choose doesn't work well with others, it's probably not going to be used in larger applications in companies who are developing larger apps, and that's going to put you at a disadvantage. Point number four, ease of use. Now, this one is fairly self-explanatory. How simple is this platform to get into and use? You get some that are very intuitive. You walk in and you can figure things out, and you get some that you break your head trying to do even the most simplest of things. That's something to really look into, because even if it's easy to use, it's going to take a lot quicker for you to develop apps. And if it's complicated and unnecessarily convoluted, you're gonna just stress yourself out, and it's going to take you very, very long to put out even the simplest of app or makes the smallest of changes. And finally, and well, probably one of the most important, is features. What is this framework capable of? So and that ultimately is going to determine whether it's worth learning for you. Does it meet the criteria, or is it capable of doing the things that you want to set out to do, right? Can it develop the type of apps? Does it have the required features that you're looking for? That's important to look for. So take note of these five platforms, or these 5 points. And when you complete your course and you're ready to go forward, look back at these, and when you're looking at a new platform, make sure that it checks all of these boxes. Is it popular? Does it have support? Is it compatible and cross-platform? Is it easy to use? And is it filled with the features that you need? Now, coming back to the HTML5 platforms, I've shortlisted 3 that I think that are the most popular in the world at the moment, and that, as far as I know, check all of these boxes. So when it comes to you branching out and looking into platforms to specialize in, I highly recommend going with one of these. So first and foremost, I think probably the most popular in the world at the moment, in fact, it's one of the IT varsity specializations, is React and React Native. React Native and React is probably the most popular cross-platform HTML-based or HTML5-based framework out there. It was developed by Facebook, or now called Meta, and they support it extensively. So there is tons and tons of resources out there in terms of official documentation and in terms of third-party and community-generated content and tutorials. There's endless forums, there's wikis. Basically, any question you have or anything you're trying to achieve with React, someone has already did and has shared their learnings online. So it's very easy to get by. And the thing about React, or like all of the frameworks on this list that I'm going to share with you, it's cross-platform, meaning you develop once and you are able to deploy your code base on virtually any platform out there, whether it's iPhone, Android, Windows, TVs, even your home fridge. can probably run some of these frameworks. Uh, no, but when it comes to learning, there is a bit of a learning curve with React because it doesn't use HTML5 directly or specifically. It uses its own language called React Native that's very similar to HTML5, but it's not the same thing. But as someone who has done HTML5, looking at React's native script, it'll be very easy to pick up because just like HTML, it uses this tag system to position elements. And the scripting is very, very, very similar to JavaScript. So it'll be familiar to you, but there is going to be a bit of a learning curve and getting the hang of their syntax and their tags. But like I said, it's worth it because of how popular it is, and develop once, deploy anywhere. And there's quite a few huge apps that were developed using React Native. So because it was developed by Meta, all of Meta's apps, including Instagram and Facebook, and their Messenger app, are built using React Native. And you even got things like Airbnb and I think Uber Eats as well, which are built with React Native and React. But important to note, though, is that React is primarily a front-end software. So it's just the front end you're developing. The back end will still have to be made up of other technologies, which, if we go back to this slide, in terms of compatibility, because React is just a front end, it's highly compatible with other back end technologies. So your skill set will plug in perfectly into a larger team who's working on larger projects. So looking at React, right, let's go through this list real quick and see which of these boxes it checks. Popularity, check, right? It's amongst the world's most popular at the moment. And that goes for support as well. It's extensively supported online, both with official and community-generated content. It's compatible with just about everything. It's relatively easy to use, especially for you guys who are doing quite a bit of HTML5. And in terms of features, well, you're going to have to decide that one for yourself. It's very capable of front-end development, but if you're looking for something that includes back-end as well, it's not going to check the boxes for you. But if you're doing just the front end, it's perfect. It's exactly what you're going to need. Right. So that's React. Next is Angular. Now, Angular goes way back, right? When cross-platform mobile app development first became a thing, Angular was one of the first big names out there. And everyone was using Angular at some point or the other. And then over the years, other technologies came out, such as React and Ionic, and Angular kind of became less popular, but I've noticed recently there's been a bit of a resurgence. And part of that is due to who supports Angular. Angular is supported by Google and is maintained by Google. So they obviously contribute quite a bit to its popularity and to the support online. Now, unlike with React, Angular is far more extensive in that it's not just front end, but it's an MVC framework. So it handles the front end, the back end, and everything in the middle, the connectors between the front end and the back end. So it's a more holistic solution for larger enterprise level apps. Oh, it's Bilal in the comments also. He mentioned that I think it was in 2012 he developed an app, Arithmetic, which was a maths worksheet app for schools from like grade 4 to grade 7, and it won the Vodacom App Star App of the Year awards, and it was built using Angular. But the thing about Angular, though, you know, it's very extensive. It can cover the MVCs, but that comes at the cost. It is a lot harder to learn than other platforms like React. It's capable of a lot more, and if you have the resources and the teams for it, it's definitely the right way to go. But yeah, it's much harder. And there are resources online, but I think Angular will require a lot more experience before you get into it. and if you can get into a team that's working it at learning there, it's it'll help a lot. And some of the apps that or popular apps that were developed with Angular, other than arithmetic, would be things like Google or Gmail or any of the major Google apps like their Drive, Google Sheets. These would be using Angular, as well as Udemy. The Udemy's app, not their website, is built on Angular. So from the type of apps that you see use Angular, it'll give you an idea of what it's used for. So in terms of React versus Angular, as a solo developer, probably React is going to be a better option, but something to get into at a later date, if you're getting into the industry, Angular might be worth it because it's used for larger scale projects. Not to say that React isn't. In fact, React and Angular can work hand in hand as well. So Angular can provide some of the back-end things, and uh, React is used for the front-end applications. Right, and finally, or rather, before we go to the final one in our list, let's go back to our checklist and check on this, or compare Angular against these checklists. So popularity, yeah, Angular is extremely popular, but not as popular as it used to be, and not as popular as some of the other uh, um, platforms out there. In terms of support, there is some support out there, but because of how extensive it is, it's going to be a little harder to find specific queries and specific answers for things that you're looking for. Compatibility, yes, Angular is compatible, but unlike with React, it's going to require a little bit more effort to connect it to some of the other platforms. It's not as straightforward because of how extensive React on its own is. I mean, Angular on its own is. Ease of use, okay, this one not so much. React doesn't score points. I mean, Angular doesn't score points here because it's a little difficult to use. And features, yeah. So Angular is chock full with features. Okay, William asked, will we learn Angular and React in our courses? So React, yes, if you chose the front end React developer specialization over the Java and the Python modules. Angular, we don't cover, unfortunately. However, even if you did choose the Python and the JavaScript, or the JavaScript modules, or if you're doing one of our older courses that don't include one of those specializations, it's still an option to go back and complete those modules afterwards as, extracurricular. It won't be part of your qualification, but you can do it just as a skills program to level up your skills and diversify your skill set. So that is an option available. Okay, and finally, the final framework we're going to cover today is Ionic. Ionic is also it's been out there for a while. I wouldn't say it's as popular as some of the others out there like React, but I chose Ionic for this list for one reason, and that's because it's a lot more lightweight than the others, even more lightweight than React. And as an HTML5 developer, Ionic is going to be the easiest for you to pick up and learn, because unlike with React that uses React Native and Angular that uses TypeScript, Ionic uses pure HTML, HTML5. So it's very intuitive for someone who's coming from an HTML5 or web design background. But just like the others, it's used for cross-platform app development. So you develop one code set and you can deploy it on virtually any platform out there. And the thing that I like about Ionic, though, is that even though it's pure HTML5, it's not really short on features. One of the best features, or one of my favorite features of Ionic, is its library of UI elements. So it's meant to develop apps that look and feel native. And to help developers with that, the Ionic team develops UI features that look like native features. So in Ionic, you can add in, for example, a button that looks exactly like the buttons you'll find on an Android phone or on an iOS phone. And you can incorporate that into your code and customize it anyhow you want. So it comes with this library of pre-built UI features that you can just add in anywhere you need. And that makes it very, very handy and very, very easy to use. But in terms of like overall features and capabilities, Ionic on itself will probably sit under platforms like React. It's not as extensive. Not to say that it's lacking really. It's extremely capable on its own, but it's just less so than some of the other bigger names out there. And the thing about Ionic though is it makes up for that lack of features on its own by being very, very compatible with other platforms out there. So you can use it with React, for example, even. You can use it with Angular, and you can even use it with platforms like Cordova, which will give you access to more native features. So for example, if you want to create an app that accesses a device's camera or accesses its GPS feature, like you're making a navigation app or whatever it is, Ionic can use frameworks like that to incorporate those features into your application. So it's highly compatible with other platforms out there, and that makes it, a valuable skill to learn. So again, if we were to go up to our checklist, popularity, yeah, I'd say it's fairly popular. Support, there's quite a bit of resources available out there. Not as much as React, but it's still extremely well supported online. Compatibility, definitely a yes. Ease of use, again, a definite yes, especially if you're coming from a web design or an HTML5 background. And features, okay, it's for front-end development, it's 10 out of 10, but if you're looking for anything more than that, it might come up short, but you can incorporate it or connect it with other platforms that use those. And that is Ionic. So there's plenty more frameworks out there. In fact, there's quite a few that use these. So for example, with React, you have I think it's called Next. We even got oh, the names are escaping me right now. But yeah, there's frameworks built on these frameworks. So there's no shortage of choices that you can make. But whenever you're looking into frameworks and you're trying to choose one, just make sure it checks those boxes. All right, let me just go and read out some of the questions that we have. So from a student point of view, is it better to focus on mastering one framework or gaining a basic understanding of several? As a student, it's better to learn one. So pick one, pick the most popular. So for example, React and master it. You can even go out and go on to build an entire career just on that one. But mastering one will then make it a lot easier to pick up and learn others once you need. But if you try to learn too many at the same time, you're going to end up confusing yourself and burning yourself out. So as for starters, pick one, master it, and then should a need arise, you can pick up another one and diversify. Will we learn how to convert our websites into apps? I saw a lesson teaching how to use PhoneGap, but PhoneGap is now outdated and Cordova took its place. Will we learn how to use Cordova in our course? Yes, you will. So basically what you're going to learn to do is actually a short step. What you have in your course when you develop your apps like your superhero app or your Pine City Zoo app, or the solar system app is you're developing an HTML5 web application, right? That's what it is. And when you convert it into a mobile app, what you're using is a wrapper like PhoneGap or Cordova to wrap that app in its own, or that web page in its own little browser. that can then run on virtually any device out there. So what you've done is like 90% of the work. And from here, you'll use something like, oh, well, PhoneGap is now outdated. I really don't know why they had to kill it though, but Cordova did take its place. So you use Cordova just to wrap that app in your little micro browser and then deploy it onto mobile devices. A lot of that process is automated, but yeah, you will learn how to do that. Which module can this lesson be found in? It's going to replace the PhoneGap applications, the PhoneGap modules. So I'm not too sure what module that sits in. I think it's module 2, if I remember correctly. But once the Cordova modules are done, we'll let everyone know. Do you want to have a quick meeting tonight at 7 p.m. to discuss and organize the student webinar next week Tuesday? I'm currently at work, so I will only be available tonight. Yeah, no, absolutely. What I'm gonna do is let me send you my phone number and you can just WhatsApp me or give me a WhatsApp call when you are ready. Cool. Yeah, so just drop me a message as soon as you are available. And yeah, that's actually a good call. We'll get all of the details out the way and uh, get cracking with that. Okay, guys, any more questions before we close up for today? Yes, Daniel, go for it. Any other questions, guys? When can Tawfiq and Mikhail expect to receive their certificates? They have finished the course approximately 2 months ago. Good question. So it's difficult to say, unfortunately. So when you complete your course, the process that then kicks in is assessment and moderation. So we'll take your portfolio and we will then have it assessed. We'll bring in someone called an assessor to go through your entire portfolio. We'll check every single one of your assessments again and make sure that everything is up to scratch. Then the assessor will compile a report and send it over to a second person called a moderator. A moderator then goes and does a spot check everywhere just to make sure that the assessor's work was done extensively. That process takes maybe 2 weeks to get done. And because that's handled internally by IT Varsity, or we, bring in some consultants to work with us and sort that out. So that happens relatively quickly. The delay, unfortunately, happens when we then take the moderator's report and submit it to the CETAs, who then, they do their final checks and then they print and issue us the certificates. And unfortunately, with the CETAs, just like, most government organizations, there's no telling when we get things done. So lately, there have been massive, massive delays with our certificates. Um, and we follow up as much as we could, but after a while they start getting irritated at us. But yeah, so with your certificates, if you've completed the course probably like within a month or so, your assessment or your portfolio has probably already completed assessment and moderation, and it's currently sitting with the CETAs and we are waiting for them. The only thing we can do is wait for them to print it and send it to us, and we can just only follow up with them. So usually how long does the entire process take? So up until moderation and submission to the CETA, that takes again like 2 to 3 weeks. But the CETA's process can take from a month, 2 months to, sometimes we waited over a year even for a specific student's certificate. Hopefully it'll never be that bad again with you guys, but it's just we can never really say for certain. But in the meantime, what we do is because obviously that can't hold you back from applying for further studies or for applying for jobs. So IT Varsity is mandated then in the interim to first issue you a IT Varsity certificate, which we generate, stating that you completed the course, and along with that, issue a letter of completion along with an academic transcript, which is a letter stating that you completed the course, and it gives the details of the qualification and states that you are currently waiting for your official certificate from the CETA. And then it has a breakdown of all your modules, all the unit standards you've covered, and your grades that you achieved for with each of those modules. And you can use that in lieu of your official certificate while you are in waiting. I'm glad you enjoyed this, Romesa, and I hope you have a fantastic day as well. Okay, guys, I hope that answered all of your questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me or drop me a message on Slack, and I will try my best to get back to you guys. But if there's no further questions, I think we will leave it there for today. I hope you guys really, really enjoyed the session. I hope you benefited from it. And yeah, I hope to see you again next week, where hopefully we will have a guest join us. So until then, bye everyone, and have a fantastic rest of the week.